Good afternoon and welcome to the Legacy Guard. This is Draco Argentum, and I am joined today by Taurus Crimson.
Greetings and welcome all.
Unfortunately, Porglord is not available for discussion this week, so we've decided to shift our target away from Star Wars and towards something that Porglord perhaps is not as familiar with. Today, we are going to be discussing the great property that was brought to us on the part of Nickelodeon. That is Avatar: The Last Airbender. For anyone who's not seen that, Avatar uh, was a great anime that was put out by Nickelodeon. No one really ever expected much from it, but it really impressed a lot of people. It started back in 2005 and it concluded on Nickelodeon in 2008. So this has actually been out for 10 years, Taurus.
That's insane. I've been hearing about it for about as long, and finally just completed it yesterday. Did you watch this when it was actually on the air?
I did not. I also heard really good things about it, but I did not have the opportunity to take part in and seeing it as it was going. Although I will just point this out right here. Interesting how great people are associated with great properties.
Yes, indeed. Dave Filoni, when he was doing Clone Wars, I had looked him up and had seen at the time that he was associated with Last Airbender. Yet another indication that I should have watched the show, but um, I'm certainly glad to have seen it now. And man, were the people, including yourself, um, telling me that this was a must-watch show, and you know how it is with media, Draco. There's just not enough time to go around.
And exactly, I understand that completely.
So I
So,
really have to vet properties. It's like, is this a commitment that I want to get into? And man, am I glad that I did.
well, I'm glad that you did as well. Just as a brief overview for those people who may be interested in seeing this, warning: this video will contain spoilers for Avatar: The Last Airbender. Our video will be going over the 3 seasons of the television show that aired on Nickelodeon, and we will also be discussing the movie that was made by M. Night Shyamalan that came afterwards. So if you've not seen that and you wish to protect your virgin eardrums, please, you may want to look away at this time. We will be discussing plot points, what sets this show apart from others, and and our opinion on the TV show versus the movie as well. That being done, we've given out all the necessary warnings, the necessarily spoiler alerts. The I, Let's begin. So, Avatar: The Last Airbender is set in a world where the world is split up between four different peoples, four different nations, and they are split up based off of the elements for their particular nation. You have the Fire Nation, the Earth Nation, the Water Nation, and the Air Nation, and these different individual nations appear to align based off of different ethnic groups and different customs and different ways of life. What was your thought about the background world that this was set in, Taurus?
It was really fascinating. It was really grounded in reality, but it had enough fantasy in it to really kind of give it that mystical feel. Um, the controlling of the elements, kind of similar to Jedi powers, that kind of ideal. What I really thought was neat about the world building throughout the 3 seasons were the combination of animals. You like a lion turtle and such kinds of things. Was really fascinating how they combined animals that we know into a completely new creature. Um, but I thought it was very well grounded in reality, and just enough there to give you that mystical quality. Like I said, what about yourself?
I thought it was extremely well done. It did not necessarily seem so close to Jedi powers for me, basically it was to me it's almost felt like some kind of video game where you just have elemental powers. Um, but it's interesting that the different nations, all of them have an affinity to only a certain element. So the people of the Earth Nation only can do earth bending, and the people of the Water Nation can only water bend. Now, to those who are not familiar with it, the verb bending is almost as if bending the element to your will and controlling it through your will. It is the skill that is learned and is used by the benders of these different nations in order to control the elements to either use them to assist themselves or to defend themselves or attack someone else. Um, the Earth nations seem to be mostly rural farmers. The Air nations seem to be monastic Buddhists that lived up in mountain fortresses. The Water Nation, the Northern Water Nation appeared to be Inuit based. The Southern Water Nation appeared to almost to be, um, well, they
Eskimoan.
well, yeah, Eskimo. And they seem to the Water Nation people seem to live in Arctic settings. The Air Nation peoples lived in the far east and the far west in the mountainous areas, in mountainous ruins and temples. Oh, I imagine they weren't ruins until the Fire Nation came through and wiped them all out. Then you have the Fire Nation, which lives in almost an industrialized society, or the most industrialized society you see around that area. And then you have the Earth Nation, where they focus mostly on farming. So everyone certainly has their own niche.
Yeah, and I wonder if the Fire Nations suppress, kind of like the Lord Ruler in Mistborn. I wonder if the Fire Nations suppressed technologies from other societies.
That's right, because at the beginning of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Aang, the main character, who is the Avatar, who is the mythical being who has the ability to bend all four elements, he has been sealed away. He has been missing for 10 years. Is it?
Yes, no, 100 years.
100 years. So the Fire Nation, which has been the ruling force in that area, has had 100 years to exert their will over the rest of the world. So that very well could be the case.
Yeah, and also you had mentioned each of the four nations being able to only control their specific element. Not everyone in those particular nations were benders, and
Oh
that's
no,
part of what I kind of likened to Jedi. Not everybody could do it. It was a special ability. The last waterbender of the Southern Water Tribe, being Katara, they were being hunted down, and when I likened it to Jedi earlier, not necessarily the powers, but some of the similarities. Them being hunted down by the Fire Nation, kind of like the Jedi were hunted down by Palpatine, and then the rarity. If somebody's a bender, then it's kind of like the Jedi was kind of a special thing. At the very beginning of the series, we meet Katara and her brother Sokka. Is it Soka or Sokka?
I think it's Sokka.
That was a joke about the movie. We
Yeah,
we really had we watched the movie last night, and we really had some outrage at some of the pronunciations.
it's
But
it's not Aang, it's Ong.
it's not Ong, it's Soka, not Sokka.
Yeah.
There were a couple of, oh, and General Iroh was pronounced Ero.
Mm-hmm.
Rage inducing, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that later.
We'll get to that.
But yeah, I thought it was really neat that not everyone could do it. It was still kind of a specialized thing. Um, but yeah, I think we'd started talking about Fire Nation wiping out people's um, technologies and kind of suppressing them, because um, once the Avatar disappeared, which is kind of the intro, the Avatar disappeared 100 years ago. The Fire Nation just completely took over in that 100 year span.
Correct, correct. So it's not necessarily like a skill like bowcraft. It is something. It is a talent that you're born with, whether or not you can or cannot bend. So Aang is the heir to an ancient legacy, the Avatar. The Avatar is I guess you could call it a semi mythical being. It's almost kind of like the Dalai Lama or some other mythical being, where when one avatar dies, another their ability is passed on to another individual in another country.
They are
What was
reincarnated in a cycle.
correct? They pass to the next seat in the reincarnation cycle, and the prior avatar had been on the Fire Nation. So they knew that when the Fire Nation avatar had died, that the next avatar would arise amongst the Windbenders, the Airbenders. Um, Go ahead.
Correct. Well, I was just going to say, um, the Fire Nation knew that the Avatar was dead. In fact, Fire Lord Sozin allowed him to die on his island, but I think the rest of the world just assumed he disappeared. So the Fire Nation not only knew the truth because Sozin allowed Avatar Roku to die, but they were, like you said, they were actively hunting the Airbenders. So they had gone and wiped out both the eastern and western air temples hunting the Avatar. But to the rest of the world, it seemed to them like the Avatar had just vanished, and they had no idea um, what had happened.
Correct. So we begin the first season. We meet two of our main characters. We meet Sokka and we meet Katara, and they are brother and sister. They are members of, I do believe, the Southern Water Tribe. Are they not?
Yes, Sokka and Katara are both from the Southern Water Tribe.
Yes, and Katara is manifesting the abilities of a waterbender, which is very rare amongst her people, since they are often attacked by the Fire Nation, and they have been victim to the deprivation the uh, they have been vulnerable to those attacks repeatedly over the ages, and the Fire Nation has constantly targeted their benders to try to eliminate that hereditary ability from their people.
Indeed. And, at first, the series begins with Sokka and Katara out. I think they're out hunting, trying to find some food for their village, and they stumble across the Avatar, which sets into motion the events of season one, where the Avatar returns. Our villain, Prince Zuko, is hunting the Avatar, trying to regain his honor. He's been kicked out of the Fire Nation for his father for essentially being insubordinate at a war meeting, and speaking out against basically using meat shields. So his father. They end up fighting in a duel. His father burns and scars the would
Young
be
Prince.
the young prince. The whole side of his face is burned off. So he is trying to regain his honor. So essentially, the first season is Avatar and his friends, Katara Sokka and his air bison, um,
Appa.
Appa, and I think they find Momo in the first season as well, his little flying monkey lemur.
Well, I think well, Zuko has been exiled from the Fire Nation, and he's been told that he can come back once he finds the Avatar. But the Fire Nation has spent all their resources for the past 100 years to find the Avatar, so it's really considered a hopeless quest.
Correct.
He is not meant to ever find him. He is just meant to spend his time and effort for the rest of his life on a pointless quest.
Right.
And instead, he ends up going all the way to the Southern Water Tribe area, and this happens conveniently right after Aang is awakened by Katara and Sokka. Aang had been flying through, I guess, some kind of blizzard, and he had been struck by lightning on his air bison, and his avatar powers had managed to protect him in a some kind of cocoon of a sort, which had frozen the water around them, and so he'd been locked inside of a glacier or inside of an iceberg when Sokka and Katara awakened him. Um, they explained to him that he's been missing for 100 years, which kind of a bit of heavy information for someone who like 9 or 10. Um,
I was thinking he was closer to 12.
Could be, could be. And then they continue to say basically, well, sorry, this is what's going on. And again, yes, they spend the first season evading Zuko. They travel to one of the airbending temples where they find Momo, and then they continue along again, evading Zuko. And Aang starts learning waterbending from Katara, what little she knows. So
Indeed, and she does know very little. Can you pull up the episode list on Wikipedia so we can kind of um, see what the episodes were? Uh, Watching this for the first time, um, let's see. I think if you scroll up just a little bit, Draco, to the top of season one, it gives you. Keep going up. Right there, if you click on the that link, Avatar: The Last Airbender season one, it gives you plot summaries. If you click on that, so yeah, the Avatar returns, the Kyoshi Warriors. Um, this was a group of women that ends up playing a large role in the series later on. We meet Omashu. We get to meet some Earthbenders for the first time, and some of Aang's friends from 100 years ago that were still alive. Um, the Winter Solstice, yeah, Waterbending Scroll. But yeah, most of the first season was essentially them running from Zuko and General Zhao, who was actually a high ranking member of the Fire Lord Ozai's military, realizing that the Avatar is back or has been found, hunting and essentially in a race with Zuko to find the Avatar. Zuko is in it for his honor. General Zhao is in it for essentially his career and his pride. He eventually becomes an admiral in the series. Um, so they eventually all meet up in the same place at the northern water tribe where Aang is trying to get so he can find a master waterbender to teach him. So, from what I understand, the avatars have to learn their bending according to the cycle. So there's air, water, earth, and fire. So the first one he had to learn was water, and they all culminate in a grand finale at the Northern Water Temple. Draco, did you want to go over any of these episodes specifically, or?
oh no, I'm good with that. I do agree. The end of the first season culminates with the group reaching the Northern Water Tribe, and both Katara and Aang. Of course, Katara's had to prove her worthiness to learn amongst their people because in the Northern Water Tribe, women are not permitted to bend water. But eventually, this comes to pass. They are permitted to both train under this master bender, and I'm seeing a very familiar face appear, a very familiar name on a lot of these really good episodes
Yes,
as a
indeed.
director. So,
I
and
think
of course,
he directed the first one as well.
he did, and look at this. That's an interesting name there too.
Yes, it is. Would you like to point out why that's interesting?
Aaron Ehas is the primary writer for a new property that's just released on Netflix called The Dragon Prince, and we may actually be doing a review on The Dragon Prince in these upcoming weeks.
Indeed.
So, I've heard that a lot of the talent that went into Avatar: The Last Airbender was recruited for The Dragon Prince. So I'm looking forward to giving it a review.
The Dragon Prince is pulling in Orville, essentially.
It is that. It is that. Now, I don't want to skip ahead, but the beginning of this first season is referred to as Book One, and that is the Book of Water, and it basically covers the amount of time during which Aang is you know learning about the world, how it's changed, and he is training himself to do water bending. And at the end of this season, he is pretty much fully trained to do water bending. He may still need some further training because Katara is much more of a natural at it than he is because she is a waterbender by by right, and she has a very strong talent for waterbending. But this first season is also the whole set of the storyline that the M. Night Shyamalan movie covered.
Correct. It was very intentionally supposed to be the first part of a trilogy. The intention was to film three movies, with this being the first chapter. Um, and do you want to talk about the movie now, or do you want to
I
wait till the end?
I I I think that yeah, let's wait
Let's
till
get
the
it out of
end.
the way.
Well, let's get it
Oh,
out of the way. Let's get it out of the way. Let's get it out of the way.
since we're talking about the first season, let's talk about the finale of the animated season real fast, and let's get the movie out of the way.
Sure.
At the end, everybody ends up at the Northern Water Tribe. Zuko is there to try and capture the Avatar for himself. He's actually there in secret by himself. General Zhao or Admiral Zhao at this point has unleashed all of his forces on the Water Tribe, and the moon and ocean spirits have taken have manifested themselves in
Koi
physical
fish.
form as two koi fish, as yin and yang type of representation that are in a sacred pond at the Northern Water Tribe. And
Hmm.
Admiral Zhao had raided a library that had given him the information, and the power of the waterbenders comes from the moon. So when the moon is at its fullest, when the gravitational forces of the moon are strongest, I guess is the idea, then the waterbenders are stronger. So
Hmm.
during the invasion, Zhao actually goes into the temple and kills the one of the fish that represents the moon, which kind of negates the moon's strength. Is that kind of how you took that,
Well,
Draco?
as I understand it, eh, a lot of the themes that are found in Avatar: The Last Airbender are things that are actually really rational. Um, the way they see it, if there's say a if there's the whenever the moon rises, the moon controls the tides, and whenever the tide is high, the waterbenders have more ability, more strength because there's more water in the area. That's the idea. And if on this night when the moon was supposed to be full, then based off of that logic, the waterbenders are going to be incredibly powerful. But by killing the koi fish that represents the moon, they have in essence killed the moon, and the moon is gone. The light of the moon is taken away. And in that case, it's not a matter of it being a new moon where the moon is just hidden. The moon is dead.
Yeah,
So
I mean it's still there, but it essentially is powerless.
yes, and so the waterbenders at that point lose the boost, any kind of boost from the moon, and it would almost be as if what the firebenders would face if there was an eclipse.
Indeed, and we'll get to that. Um, so essentially, what happens is the princess Yue, who when she was born had, I think she was basically stillborn. Is kind of how
She was
it's,
very ill. I think
or she
she,
was sick. I thought she wasn't breathing. Anyway, she was very sick when she was born, and life from the koi fish was given
it,
to her.
yes, it says in here in this episode that when she was a baby, she was touched by the moon spirit, explaining her unique white hair. So Yue gives that same energy, that same life energy that was given to her as a child back to the moon spirit.
Which
And
is essentially ends her life to bring
yes,
the moon back. And so then, when the moon comes back, the Fire Nation is surprised. Aang enters the Avatar state and turns into a giant water kaiju. I don't know
yes.
about you, Draco, but I like giant monsters,
Uh, ka-
and
Kaiju are pretty awesome. Yes,
it's hard to go wrong with a kaiju. And I watched this with all three of my boys. We've been watching all of the episodes together, and there was some cheering going on when that happened. It was an awesome finale. He turns into a giant water-based kaiju and just starts wreaking havoc on the Fire Nation fleet. And this is how season one ends. Aang has learned waterbending, and they have wrecked a large portion of the Fire Nation's fleet and taken down one of their top generals. Kind of like
Correct.
maybe blowing up a Death Star and taking out a Grand Moff.
Correct. Very similar, except I never saw Luke enter an avatar state. He would have become a space kaiju, maybe a space whale.
Indeed. So let's
So,
talk. Let's go ahead and talk about the movie since it was based on season one. Draco,
all right.
what were your thoughts about M. Night Shyamalan's anti masterpiece?
M. Night Shyamalan, well, in a word, I was impressed. I was impressed because all the set pieces were really good. I was impressed because all the effects were really, really good. I was impressed because clearly he had watched the material. His right, everyone who worked on the material was familiar with the material. Um, I was even impressed by the fact that okay, I wasn't impressed. I was a little bit upset about the fact that he tried to create the characters as the absolute polar opposite of the as they were in the original material. You have Aang, who in the original material is this upbeat, energetic kid. Sure, he's the last of his people, but he's not going to spend the time focusing on that. He's gonna airbend and he's gonna hover around on his air hoverball, and he's gonna do everything he can to not really have to deal with that because that's his character. But in M. Night Shyamalan's universe, he's haunted by the fact that he is the last of his kind, and he cannot get beyond that fact that everyone he knows, everyone he loved, are all dead, which is depressing. You have Katara in the show. Katara is kind of the leader of the group. She's the one that holds everyone together. She's empathetic, but
She's the mother,
she's the mom, and she
and
stands
that's
up for
actually
herself.
addressed in the series later when she's kind of confronted for being bossy. And it's she had lost her mother at a young age, and she was the older sibling, and she took care of her younger brother, and uh, is the oldest one of the team avatars they call it. So she was the mother of the group.
And she was strong. She was mature. She was the one who was the trying to keep her head clear in no matter what situation they were at. She was trying to keep everyone focused on their goal. She was the one who was not giving up. She was a leader. She was a strong personality, and she was her entire tribe was trying to discourage her from trying to grow her waterbending talents. And that's why she had to do it when she was out hunting with Sokka, because no one else really wanted her waterbending around the tribe. It was frowned upon. So she was a rebel, and she was standing up for herself the entire time. But in M. Night Shyamalan's version, she is a damsel in distress who can't get anything done by herself. She requires everyone else to look out for her, take care of her, and console her at every opportunity. And then you have Sokka. Now, Sokka in the TV show, he's kind of incompetent a bit in the beginning. I mean, he's got a boomerang, and he I guess he can kill some sea lions or seals with his boomerang and hunt some food. But he's really around for comedic relief. He's not really going to be the one who fights the battle and wins the war, but he's dependable. He's going to do everything he can, and he's going to point out just how ridiculous the plans are and how ridiculous what they're trying to do is. And that's valuable for the viewer because the viewer doesn't know in this world how ridiculous the situation is unless Sokka is there to tell them. And over time, the viewer becomes to rely on him for that. His snarky comments, his sarcasm, and there are times he's really funny. But in M. Night Shyamalan's universe, he's super serious. He is super intent on getting things done, and he won't let anyone else do anything for themselves. He has to take over every situation and has to make sure it's done right. And he's absolutely, at positively never funny. And so yeah, I was impressed by how much effort and how much detail they went into on the movie, but it just the amount of work they did and everything that they did right in those parts of the movie only made it that much more wrong how badly the characters were written. I don't know if M. Night decided to take it upon himself, assuming that if the characters are written completely opposite of how they were in the show, that the movie would be better, the show would be better. But I know he alienated me, and I know he alienated a lot of other fans, and I know that it was the very first time I had ever, ever considered, um, harming a director for what they had done to a property. I was perhaps more upset with M. Night Shyamalan for what he did with the Airbender movie than I am upset with anyone else for what they may or may not have done with the Star Wars movie.
Ooh, man. I that's that's powerful stuff right there you're saying, Draco.
That is. What about you, Taurus? How how was your viewing and your reaction and those of the young Crimsonlings?
So, I had all the things that you just said. I had heard before going into the movie. I'd heard talk about very similar comments that you made, not only from yourself but from a couple other buddies. And you were spot on. I went into the movie with very low expectations, based on what I'd heard and reviews that I'd read. And typically, when that happens, you end up being pleasantly surprised and saying, "Wow, this movie's not as bad as I thought." That was not the case here. I went in with low expectations, and they were met. Now, there's a couple things. One is that this was a kids show. It was a kids show that was way better than it had any right to be. And I don't know if these guys had maybe pitched this to HBO as a live action thing, and everybody passed on it, and the only people that would pick it up were Nickelodeon. I don't know how this went about. I don't know if they wanted it to be a kids show or what, but the lore and the story. I mean, you were talking about Sokka earlier and him, being somewhat incompetent. That's addressed in the show. Him having insecurities about being with all these benders. I mean, what kind of kids show addresses stuff like that? I mean, it was a very smart show. It was so much more than a kids show, but it operated well on so many levels. I mean, my 3-year old loved it, my 6-year old, my 8-year old, myself, all loved this show for very different reasons. But most of the kids liked it for the same reasons, but totally different reasons than I liked it. And then there were some shared things. But I think what Shyamalan was trying to do, I think I understand what he was trying to do. He was trying to say, if this hadn't been a kid show, had this been a legitimate, live action series on a network, you know, what would it have been like? And I think he tried to give it a somber tone, a more serious uh, tone, and give it some more weight. But what happens when you do that is that you lose the heart of your characters. It's like Ninja Turtles can be reincarnated a billion times with different events and different storylines and whatnot. As long as you get the characters right, you're going to be fine. I think that's what the Last Jedi complaint was. You screwed Luke. Okay, you got the characters wrong. Characters are more important than anything. Had M. Night Shyamalan gone totally AWOL on the story, I think people would have been more forgiving than him getting the characters wrong. That, like you said, Katara is not the strong female character that she is in the show. Sokka, who is, honest to God, the first few episodes, probably the first season, I thought he was extremely annoying. By the end of the series, he's up there with your favorite characters, and it's hard to choose because he's so endearing. So, uh, getting those characters wrong was a bad move on his part. And like I said, I think I know what he was going for. Let's make this a serious thing. But
He
Aang was a
failed.
kid. What's that?
He failed.
He failed miserably. Aang was a child. He was playing. In fact, part of the series was everyone else trying to get him to focus and to practice. The weight of the world is on a shoulder of a child. I mean, how easy is that going to be? Kids want to play, and rightly so. It's like it was starting kids in competitive sports when they're 5. Let the kids just go play, man. This kid has got to learn all these bending techniques, and he's got to take down a Fire Lord. I mean, he was around playing, goofing off. Sokka was cutting jokes, and Katara's trying to keep everything in order. Aside from that, Zuko, Iroh were pretty close to what they were in the series. Same with Zhao. Now, something else that bothered me was that Fire Lord Ozai is not seen in the first series. He is so vile and so atrocious that they couldn't even show him to the audience yet. You see him in shadow, maybe in silhouette, or behind a wall of fire, but you don't actually see his face until season 2. And he was in the movie quite frequently. Not only was he in the movie quite frequently, but he looked like an NFL linebacker, not like the Fire Lord that you see in the series. Iroh looked completely different than what he was in the series. In the series, he was a very robust man with giant chops, and he loved tea, and his look was very different in the movie. He almost had dreadlocks. He was very thin, and like I said about the Fire Lord Ozai, he was clean shaven, had very short hair. In the series, he has a very long beard that's almost pharaoh like, and his hair is up in the knot that firebenders are known to keep. In fact, the crown, if you will, is a metal emblem of fire that is stuck into the hair. And just little things like that, little attention to detail bothered me about the film as well. But like Draco mentioned, it was almost like a Hobbit experience. The Hobbit got so many things right as far as cinematography, the sets, the special effects. They got all that right. Hobbit got the characters right also, which is something that this movie did not get. But it looked great. The water bending looked great. The fire bending, all those things, they looked great. Appa looked great. Momo looked great. I thought the casting was fairly well done as far as Katara, Sokka, and Aang went. But then the pronunciations. Why the hell are you changing the way you say names? Aang. Like, is there some legal reason you can't say Aang? Sokka was Soka. Iroh was Iro or whatever. It just there were so many things that just didn't make sense. Did that stuff bother you as well, Draco?
Oh yeah, it was infuriating. Now, here's one of the previews. The stuff they got right in this was so amazing. Oh wait, I
And
don't
this
think.
is what
I mean, I don't know if we can show this actually on YouTube. So anyhow, um, but okay, I don't care. But yeah,
but yeah, both I doubt the two people watching will tell anyone. But yeah, looking at this trailer, you would think, "Oh my god, I am so excited to see this movie." That scene went on entirely too long. So, the blue spirit, if you
yeah,
remember from the series, was actually Zuko rescuing Aang from Zhao, and in the film they actually include the blue spirit. Uh, and as they're trying to escape from Zhao's prison, it's like a 30-minute sequence. It's like they cut out so much of the first season, which for the most part I thought the script was pretty decent. It hit the high points
it did.
and moved it, so I don't have any problems with the actual script itself. I thought they did a pretty good job, with the exception of one thing that I'll talk about here in a second. But there were two things that really bothered me about just the cinema in general. One is that there was a whole lot of moving and around and gesturing. It's kind of hard to do this off camera, but they had to do the moves before they could bend in the show. But in the movie, it's like they would just move and move and move and move and move. And then finally at the end, you might get a little action. I mean, it was incredibly frustrating to see so much movement going on. It was almost like he was just so fascinated with the martial arts style um, movements that kind of got caught up and obsessed with it. And then the scene with the blue spirit when they're escaping went on entirely too long. But the thing that made me the maddest
Okay, go
of,
for it.
of this whole film, we just talked a second ago, how much we love kaiju. You can't go wrong with a giant monster. At the end, Aang goes into the Avatar state, and I'm saying, you know what? All is forgiven if I get to see a giant water monster destroy some ships. He goes into the Avatar state. I say, this is it. He raises the water level of the ocean. Here it is. Here it is. It's coming. And then he lowers the water level of the ocean.
Yeah,
What the hell?
they took away your kaiju moment.
They took away my kaiju moment, and at that point, uh, it's unforgiven, man. Were you disappointed by not the lack of a giant water kaiju?
Uh, yeah, I went to the theater to see this.
Oh, did you?
Yes, I went to the theater in 2010. I went to the movie theater shortly after this came out to see it because I was invested. I had seen it all by that point. I was invested. I wanted to see this thing, and by that point I was ready to spit at so I was at the very it was at the very end. I'm thinking this is so wrong. I was watching it. I'm going, why is he doing this? This is so wrong. So at the end, yeah, the water level comes up, the water level goes down, the ships all smash into each other. But it's not like Aang is out there,
Mm-mm.
wrestling these ships down or anything like a kaiju or like some kind of big mecha. No, it's he's super empowering the moon to raise the water level and then drop the water level, and well, that's very anticlimactic. Thank you, M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah, it's like a so what moment. It
Yeah,
was very anticlimactic, and I don't know if he just thought it would be silly to have a giant water kaiju running around, but no, sir, it's not silly. There's nothing funny about giant monsters destroying things.
no, no. So as I mentioned, it was the one of the only times I've ever been horribly upset at a movie maker for what they chose to do with the movie. It was the very first time I was horribly upset, and it is the only time I have ever, I would have ever endorsed violence against them for it.
That's fascinating. There's so many times I can't even remember when the first time I wanted to endorse violence was, but I'm sorry that you were hurt by that.
Well, I mean, it had to happen at some point, I suppose.
Now
So
violence is what I go straight to at all times.
that's the default setting.
It is now, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, let's
Should we
move
move
on
on to season two?
to season. Yes, to season two. Um, season two, of course, followed up right after the Avatar state, and the first episode was basically about everyone saying, "Dude, you turned into a giant water monster," and he's like, "Really? I don't remember that." And he's like, "Yeah, dude, you kind of like slayed a bunch of people," and that was him first coming to grips with the fact that he's I mean, it's one thing to be told that you're the Avatar, and to be told that you're this powerful. You don't really believe it. I mean, it's kind of like, no, you're talking about somebody else. You are clearly mistaken because I am Aang. You're talking about Ong. You're talking about some other dude named Ong. You're talking about Jake Skywalker or
Jake Scott.
something.
You stole. I
So
was about to say that.
yeah,
Great minds.
no,
Great
so
minds.
great minds. Anyhow, but yeah, so second season is the book two, which is Earth. And as the book one was water and was concerned with Aang meeting members of the water tribe and learning how to bend water. Likewise, book two, Earth, is concerns Aang traveling through the Earth Nation and learning how to bend Earth. course, he does happen to meet some new individuals. In season one, Katara was his teacher primarily for water. In season two, he gets a new teacher. Would you like to introduce the new teacher, Taurus?
Sure. Um, Man, I don't even know what to say. Toph. She is a the blind daughter of a wealthy family in the Earth Nation, who is very in tune with the earth. She walks barefooted so she can basically see with her feet. She learned bending from badger moles, which is, like I was talking about earlier, the combination of two earth animals that we know. This is obviously a combination of a badger and a mole.
Mm-hmm.
But she was kind of trained or emulated them, and how, because they were also blind, she could relate to them. And we first see her as she's being hyped up as the champion of a basically a wrestling ring where these earthbenders are fighting each other, and eventually they bring out the champ, and it's this blind girl, and she's just waxing people off the table. And this is where you first meet Toph, and she ends up going with the Team Avatar. By the end of, I think, her episode arc, one or two, I think it was just the blind
The Blind Bandit, episode
the blind
26.
was it let's see.
That was her. That was her wrestling name, I think.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. Okay, I was trying to figure out what the title was referenced.
and
Blind Bandit. Yeah,
I think Aang went out to fight her, and I think that she was having a hard time fighting him because of his airbending. He wasn't touching the ground, so she couldn't
correct.
sense him through the ground.
He beat her. Yeah, he was airbending. He was not touching the ground, and he had blown her off the ring essentially. Could you scroll down and let me see some more of those
Sure.
titles? Um, Trying to see what else really happened.
Let's see this the library. It's the episode where they go find the desert library, and while they're in the library trying to find the information, Appa is kidnapped by sandbenders.
Which Appa getting kidnapped basically sets into motion the rest of the second part of the arc. That was about halfway through, and that's getting Appa back. But there's one thing that really changed starting in season two, aside from him getting an earth bending teacher, Draco, and that was the introduction of Azula.
That's
What
true.
what were your thoughts of Azula?
Well, Azula is Zuko's sister. I do believe an older sister, possibly.
Yeah, I believe she was the. Well, I don't. I'm not entirely sure. I guess in the Fire Nation, only would the male
I think only the males can inherit.
be the heir. It kind of seemed to me like she was the older one, but Zuko was going to inherit.
Yeah. And I think only after he is fully disowned is she then set up as the heir because there's no male
Correct.
descendants at that point. But yeah, she Azula is I have one word for her, and that's guano. That's batshit crazy, is what she is, and she is psychotic. She has taken up the after the general died. Was a general's fleet was destroyed outside of the Northern Water Tribe. General Zhao. She takes over as the primary mover and shaker in trying to track down the Avatar, and she uses less customary tasks. She has a specialized force of benders who work with her. A very small task force. They move very quietly, and they have absolutely no mercy in them whatsoever.
Actually, I think wasn't she moving at this point with just her two friends?
I think
I
so.
think her
Yes.
special task force she got was from the Earthbending Bossing Say. At this point, she was traveling with her
Well,
friend May, who was a
That's what I meant.
knives.
That's what I meant by small task force. She had two people.
Oh,
So,
I thought you had said that they were benders. Sorry.
well, isn't May a bender? A
I
firebender,
don't
so?
I don't think so. She was a knife specialist, and then Ty Lee was the other one, who was the circus performer who was
Ah,
able to hit parts of the body with what type of there was a name for it. They called it anyway. She could hit parts of the body that would immobilize you.
gotcha.
So
Anyhow,
sorry. Go ahead.
oh, not a problem, not a problem. Um, Now she is. I mentioned she's psychotic, but she's also very strong in the ways of firebending. She has developed some of the higher techniques in water and firebending. Sorry, and she's actually now able to create lightning.
Yeah, super intense. I would agree with your batshit crazy term. There's actually an episode in season 3. I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit,
Sure.
called the beach, where she goes out with Zuko and May and Ty Lee, and they're getting ready to compete in a volleyball match. And a volleyball match on the beach, you have a friendly game and whatnot. But the episode shows how she cannot relate to essentially anyone. I mean, even though Zuko grew up a prince and was pampered, he could still, have a conversation with a normal person. Azula is so psychotic that you have a volleyball match, and she's going crazy during this match, and she's trying to kill people with the volleyball. And after her team wins, she says something to the effect of, "We have defeated you for all time," and she's just so hell bent on power and destroying everyone. And she ends up going to a party at the end, and she just can't talk to other people without. I think she's talking to a cute boy, and she's saying, "If you and I were together, we would create the greatest lineage of all time." And he's like, "Okay, I'll talk to you later." So
Yes.
yeah, that's who Azula was.
So you have Toph, who has joined, and Toph becomes Aang's earthbending teacher. You have Azula, who is a who is a very effective villain, because in the first season your villains were uh oh my gosh, I just blanked out. General Zhao and Zuko. But
Yes,
in the second season, Zuko remains a villain. He remains trying to chase after the Avatar, but instead of General Zhao, you have Azula. And Azula chases them all the way to the walls of Ba Sing Se and
that's right.
beyond.
She does indeed. And General or Admiral Zhao in season 1 was a very respectable commander, I would say. Would you agree?
Agreed. I mean, he seemed to be a very by the books kind of general.
He was old school. He was a smart strategist, very in control, but not overwhelmingly terrifying. I mean, you knew he had a plan, and you knew he was a threat, but being crazy adds a sense of peril. And I think the stakes got raised in season 2 quite a bit, because whenever Azula showed up, you were legitimately concerned for your characters, because there was no mercy. There was an element of crazy to her.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, you have the siege of Ba Sing Se. This is where Aang has been led to find Appa. He believes Appa is there, and you have a final showdown with Zuko, Azula, and Team Avatar. Meanwhile, Zuko is basically being coached by his uncle Iroh to do, kind of hinted at, to do the right thing, and to you know be a good guy, if you will. And at the end, he actually decides, you know what, I'm on the wrong side. Um, I need to do the right thing. He ends up freeing Appa, um, and that's how Appa ends up getting away. And as of the end of the second season, he ends up being imprisoned with Katara. Him and Katara start to kind of form a friendship and a bond, and he's basically going Team Avatar at the end of the second season. And then Azula shows up, and she's basically saying, "You know what? You can be a traitor and go with your uncle, or you can go back a hero with me as the son of the Fire Lord who took down Ba Sing Se." And as you know, he chooses his father and chooses the side of evil again. And it was a very disappointing decision on his part for me as a viewer. What do you think about that moment, Draco?
Well, Zuko had a very complicated character arc, always swinging back and forth between different ways. His Uncle Iroh, General Iroh, was right in trying to teach him that morality is not simple. It is not black and white. It is not us versus them. Morality is made up of varying shades of gray to determine what is right, what is wrong. And sometimes right is sticking with your family. Sometimes right is protecting people whom your family is trying to kill. Um, and there are times it seems that Zuko swings on this pendulum. Yes, the entire time I was watching, I was like, all right, when is Zuko gonna give up this quest? When is he gonna join, as you say, Team Avatar? And he'll get close and then he moves back. He'll get close and he moves back. He'll he'll go he'll live with some earth bending people in a farm and heal himself up, and they'll be really attached to him and he'll protect them a bit. But when it comes out that he's a firebender, oh they're oh, you can't stay here. You're one of those firebending assholes. You've got to go. And he's like, all right, well, if I'm going to be a firebender, I'm going to be a firebender because everyone's only going to ever treat me as a firebender.
Right. And that's actually an episode, I think in season three, where, or maybe is it two or
It
three?
was two. It was,
Two.
yeah, it was.
A great episode, though, where he's basically helping an earthbending girl, I think, or boy, I think it was a child, with some bullies. Zuko alone, was that it?
It was Zuko alone. Yeah, Zuko alone. Episode 27.
Yeah, defends the family against the abusive Earth Kingdom soldiers. But yeah, at the end, he essentially it's found out that he's Fire Nation, and
And it was
the
written. Go ahead.
sorry.
It was written
Oh
by
yeah.
his wife.
Oh,
Ihaz's wife wrote that one.
very interesting. A family affair.
Uh huh.
But yeah, he helps this Earth Nation family with bullies throughout the episode, and then they find out that he's Fire Nation, and they're like, "Get the hell out of here, you filthy scum!" So it's really interesting. Again, this is a kids show showing you um, prejudice, prejudice despite actions. They know him as this good Samaritan, but then they find out his background, and they start spitting on him. So he saw both sides of it. Really, he did. He saw the scorn of the rest of the world toward the Fire Nation, and rightly so to a degree. I mean, the Fire Nation is basically what would have happened had Hitler's forces not been checked.
Mm-hmm. It's 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 impossible to say in a few words all the impact this show has had on the viewers, on children, on adults. There's merit in watching this for people of all ages, but especially for children because it does offer view into a lot of these complex and very adult ideas that children have to have some kind of exposure to, or else they'll have no idea how to process that information once they're adults, and they will become very trigger happy.
Indeed.
I'm wondering how many trigger happy, trigger warning type of people. I wonder how many of them saw Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm willing to bet not a whole lot.
Hard to say.
Hard to say.
Hard to say indeed. So, I guess let's talk about the last scene from season two, unless there's anything else you wanted to kind of cover,
I'm
any
good with that.
specific episodes. Yeah. So the last scene is the Avatar goes into the Avatar state
Mm.
just as Azula is sending a wave of lightning at him, and it essentially uh, kills him in the Avatar state. Katara has some very precious life water. I can't. Do you remember the origin of the water she was carrying? Was it
Um,
from the Northern Water Tribe pool or
I'm thinking it was, yes.
something like that? She uses it to heal Aang and bring him back, but in doing so, the lightning had blocked his
His seventh
oh
chakra.
chakra. Thank you, which prevented him from going into the Avatar state at will, which significantly lessens his power, I would say. But that's how the episode ends. Zuko returns a hero, accepted back into his father's um, company, and he is given credit by his sister Azula for being the one to kill the Avatar. And so, of course, he's a bit confused when he hears this, and he confronts his sister with this later, and he says, "Why would you give me credit for that? You're a bitch. Why would you ever do anything so kind?" And she says, "Oh, I don't know, brother. I just wanted you to get the credit, and it's not like I would want to." Give you credit just in case the Avatar wasn't dead and showed back up, which is exactly what we see happen in season three. So, um,
Because then
Draco,
all that praise would then become all that shame.
exactly. So, General Iroh gets captured at the end of season two and is imprisoned in a Fire Nation prison. In season three, this is where he is. You see Zuko is back home and is kind of wrestling with it. Season three started out for me pretty rough and silly. We have some just kind of fooling around episode. The beach that I was talking about, episode five, was basically going to a college party, and you had the headband where you had a dance party in episode two. But Sokka's Master that you're highlighting right there
Hmm.
was an excellent episode. Episode six, Avatar and the Fire Lord, was one of the best episodes in the series, even though it takes place 100 years before. It's a flashback episode, and then it gets for real, real fast. Yeah, the wife again there. So, Draco, what were your thoughts on season three? What were your highlights, your favorite moments?
Season three, definitely when the episode the Avatar and the Fire Lord, when they go to visit Avatar Roku's tower on the volcanic island, major episode.
Mm-hmm.
Sokka's Master, major episode. This is where um, we spoke that Sokka has been dealing with these issues of ineptitude because he's just the normal guy who's along with a firebender, with an earthbender, a waterbender, an airbender, and he can't he can bend a spoon, and that's with both hands. So that's the most bending he can do. So he's definitely not feeling like he's carrying his own weight. But he manages to find this master Piandao to train him, and this master he turns down people constantly, but this master accepts him. He comes in and he says, "Let me guess, you're the best. You're the best fighter of your city, of your village, and no one's ever been able to best you. And you want to come fight with me and learn from me?" And he's like, "No, actually, I really suck. I can't do anything, and I've got all these friends I need to help protect." And I can't keep up with them, and I was just hoping you could train me so I could do better. And based on that, Piandao brings him in, and they forge him a sword made out of a fallen meteor, and uh, and he learns skills which are valuable for him and carry him through the end of the series. This is perhaps Sokka has two big moments in his character arc. The first one is dealing with Princess
UA.
Princess Yue in the Northern tribe. He fell in love with her. She was betrothed to another, I guess a young general or a young military commander. but he was crushing hard on her, and when she died, it really toned down a lot of his comedy. He couldn't be quite so snarky anymore because he was actually hurting.
Yeah, indeed.
Um,
And by the way, it was a mutual affection. I believe her marriage was an arranged marriage.
it was
So yeah, so when she met him, she also was crushing hard, as you put it, on Sokka. So they it was a true budding romance.
very true. And then he was unable to protect her. He was unable to do anything for her. And so in the second season, throughout the entire second season, he's trying to deal with these feelings. So it becomes more active with the military efforts, with them trying to get away from the Fire Nation individuals. He's looking for ways to contribute. And it isn't until we get to Sokka's master that he finds some way to go out uh, and get better, become more. Also, in that same episode, you see Iroh starts devising his escape plan and starts training. I don't know what the general Iroh training regimen is, but if you could turn that into a video and market that, I mean, do you have a box to live in? Use General Iroh's training regimen.
Dude, he got ripped up in that cell.
He got shredded.
Thankfully, he had the bars at the top um, of his cell that he could pull up on and hang down from. So that was very fortunate. But yeah, he did get pretty ripped up.
Indeed, indeed. Interesting. I had forgotten about this. When Sokka leaves Pindao, Master Pindao, he gives Sokka a White Lotus Paisho
Mm-hmm.
tile.
Yes, I remember that happening, and you see General Iroh give that to someone, and I believe it was the Earth Kingdom, in order to get help, and it was basically like showing the Rebel Ring in the Last Jedi. We are a member
Indeed.
of this.
Secret
Sorry,
organization. Yeah, it's a secret
right.
society.
Yeah. So when he gave him that tile, I was like, hey, that is really cool because he finds out that Sokka is from the Water Nation, but
Mm-hmm.
prior to that, and uh, you kind of get the sense the way they directed and wrote it was that he gets very serious after that, and I believe he attacks Sokka at that moment when he finds out. But you find out later that it was just a test. He doesn't believe any one group is better than the other. When was the bloodbending episode? I believe that was the Puppet Master.
The Puppet Master,
The
episode 8.
Puppet Master is when things really start getting good. The first, well, I guess there's just a couple throwaway episodes at the beginning of season three.
It was a little
Uh,
bit of a lull, yeah.
yeah, which was uh, just un unnatural for the show at that point because you hadn't had a throwaway episode as of that point, in my opinion. And then the beach, man, that episode was bad, uh, but it did give you some context for Azula being around normal people, which was kind of cool. But yeah, the Puppet Master is probably one of my favorite episodes of the series. Well, it is one of my favorite episodes of the series, and this is where you told me about this before it was coming up. You said
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be something coming up that's going to be of equal significance to the metal bending that we see Toph do in season two.
Mm-hmm.
And this was such a cool, creepy episode because it was like a horror movie. You know, you see there's people disappearing, and then you find the puppets in the closet, and they sneak into her room to find this hidden thing, and it ends up being just I think it was a photograph. Was that what it
I'm not
was?
certain. Not certain.
Um, anyway, and oh, well, there's no secrets in here. I'm just a nice old lady. And then, of course, she teaches Katara. Um, I believe her name was Hama. Does it say
Yes,
Hama?
Hana. Hana.
Hana. So she was from the Southern Water Tribe, and she teaches Katara blood bending. Well, what is your body made of? 70% water. So why could you not control the water inside someone's body? She actually starts blood bending Katara, and Katara ends up using blood bending against this lady to defend herself. But Katara is disgusted by blood bending and thinks it is a
Repre-
moral violation of someone.
reprehensible, yes.
Absolutely. So I'm going to jump forward a little bit to Zuko. Zuko faces his father in this season and basically gives him a big fu and says, "Hey man, this was during the time of the comet, the black, not the comet, excuse me, the eclipse. Everyone had been training for the big moment when the eclipse happened because the sun is where the firebenders get their power, and when the sun goes away, the power of the firebenders go away. So what better time to attack the Fire Nation? And the Fire Lord is in a bunker deep beneath the earth. He has foreseen this. So they get there, and Aang is not able to find him, but Zuko does. And he basically tells his father that I am leaving. I'm going to join Team Avatar. Had you seen this
Hmm.
coming already at this point? Did you think he was going to go full good side by that point, Draco?
Well, I figured he was gonna break at least away from his father and just give his father the finger and say, "You know what? You're an ass. I'm leaving." Um, I wasn't certain when he was gonna go full team Avatar, but I was glad to see it when it arrived.
Absolutely. I had predicted, I think in season two at some point, that um, Aang's firebending teacher was going to be Zuko. I was 100% sure of it. And then the end of season two, he ends up choosing um, Fire Nation, and I was like, oh man, my prediction is off. But then I was super excited when he went back to Team Avatar in season three, and it was a little awkward when he joined the team, wouldn't you say, Draco?
Oh yeah, because you've had 50 episodes so far where he's been a bad guy, 50 out of 60 episodes. So there's some rough waters to patch over at this point. And you're never at that point. It's well, you sure took your time. It's not like you were dissenting out of the goodness of your heart. You really had to burn all your bridges with your firebending before you chose to join us. But again, they really weren't spoiled for choice in that.
Yeah, he was, like you said earlier, a very complex character, a very well written character, and he also was a character that I really despised early on, and as his story arc grew and he developed, he really became one of my favorite characters. And I think it was the episode called Boiling Rock. There, when he and Sokka go to rescue Sokka's father, that I really started to like him as a good guy and see that, you know what, he can be selfless. He can put other people before him. I mean, he puts his life in jeopardy going to save Sokka's father, and that was a really interesting episode. But I was really excited to see him go that way.
The
The play.
firebending masters, though, where they learn how to firebend both Zuko and Aang from dragons.
Yeah,
That was another big season 3 episode. You
it
had
was.
you had the episode where Sokka learns from the sword master. You have Katara learning to bloodbend. You have Zuko, who is now trying to teach Aang how to firebend, but Zuko no longer has his rage.
That's right.
And
His
so he's
anger was supplying his power.
and it's gone now. So he has no more ability. So and Aang doesn't have that same rage, so he couldn't firebend in the same way. It just he could maybe spark, but not fire.
Right.
So they end up having to go back and find actual living dragons to learn the true source of firebending.
And we believe dragons to be extinct at this point because they were used as sport during, I believe it was Sozin's lifetime. He started hunting them for sport, and Iroh was I believe, considered to be the last one to kill a dragon.
Correct. And that's
And
why he was called the Last Dragon.
yeah, or the Dragon of the West. And he lied about it, we
Indeed.
find out, because he held dragons sacred. And we learn in that episode that fire is about life, not destruction. And
Correct.
as you said, that was a very pivotal, so many pivotal episodes in that series, and so few throwaways. Every episode was building to something, and you had characters show up at the end. In the grand finale, Suki is back by that time. There's the group of Earthbenders that you meet in season 2. Uh, so many, the swamp people that you meet in episode The Swamp. So many episodes where you meet people that you may think that, well, that was fairly episodic, but they come back and play a role in the series later.
Indeed. Indeed. Everyone had a purpose. Everyone went somewhere and did something. You didn't have people who just appeared out of nowhere and then, broke all the rules of a series and disappeared and did things straight in a strange manner. I mean, these were responsible writers.
Yes, indeed. I want to talk about two of my favorite episodes, probably my favorite episodes in the series. I want to see the name of it here. Is this the one? Where's the one where? Whoa, stop. 16. Okay. The Southern Raiders and the Emder Island Players, both back to back episodes, are probably my two favorite episodes of the series. So everybody's been going on these great adventures with Zuko, and Katara says, that her mother was killed by the Fire Nation, and Zuko says, "Well, let's go get revenge." So she goes on a revenge quest to find the man who killed her mother. So Zuko says, "I know the fleet that killed her." So they get to this fleet, and they find the leader of the fleet, and he says, "Hey, the guy you're looking for retired a long time ago. Here's where to find him." But as she's confronting this guy, she bloodbends him. And so, when, of course, she abhors the idea of blood bending, it's repulsive to her, but she is so consumed with rage that when she sees this guy, she starts dancing him all over the place. And that was a what moment for
Uh-huh.
me, because Katara is kind of the moral compass of the group, kind of the mother, as we talked about before. So when you see her start bloodbending this dude, you know that this is a real deal, and this is something she has got to get over. So after she finds out that this is not the guy, he sends her to the man who actually was responsible for her mother's death. It actually shows this man. What's his name? Does it say? Yanra. Yanra.
Yanra. Yanra.
Yanra. So it shows Yan Ra as an older man living with his mother, and he's outside, and the mother comes outside and starts yelling at him and says, "You stop bringing me these nasty vegetables. Go into town and get me some real food." And so eventually Katara catches up with this guy, and she's got the icicles pointing at him. It's time for you to die. And he recognizes her and tells her what happened. He essentially had gone in and to her mother's tent, and he said, "Tell me who the last waterbender is." And obviously, this was Katara. And the mother lied and said it was herself, and so he killed her because they were trying to wipe out the waterbenders. Uh, and the man there facing his death says to Katara, "Can't you take my mother instead and leave me? That would be a fair trade." Because it was one shot of him interacting with his mother just a few minutes before in the episode, and her being just a complete bitch to him, was so hilarious. I laughed. I watched that scene like 3 or 4 times. My kids were like, "Dad, come on, get on with it." I just thought that was so funny. This dude's throwing his mother right under the bus in this heavy, heavy episode. It just cracked me up. And then the next episode is probably the greatest way I've ever seen to recap a series before the finale.
Agreed.
They didn't do a last time on Avatar, which is what they'd been essentially doing throughout the show. No, they find that there is a group of people in the Fire Nation who are putting on a play. Draco, you want to talk about this episode?
Well, sure, sure. Um, the play, they go in and they find out that there is a play being told about the story of the Avatar. And at this point, most everyone thinks the Avatar is dead. They think Aang is dead. But so the Avatar group is like, okay, let's go see what most people think is going on in Avatar Land. And so they go in and they find that there is a very accurate to a point depiction of everything that's going on in their entire journey. You have their events from the water tribe. You have them going to the earth people, and all the representation of each of these characters is kind of close, but it's also embarrassingly different, or it's highlighting some aspect of each of the individual's character that they're not proud of, they're ashamed of. The Avatar is this goofy kid who can't do anything, can't focus on anything, and he's a joke. Sokka is
He's also
inept.
played by a female. You remember that?
I remember that. I remember that. So as they're watching, Aang's like, "Dude, I'm not a girl. Why are you doing that?" And everyone's upset because of their portrayal in this play. And it's a long play, so they have many breaks where they'll go out and they talk to each other like, "It didn't happen that way," or "How do they even know about that?" So it's disturbing that they've been getting that much information about their journey. But the play ends with the Fire Nation winning the war. That Azula kills Zuko and Fire Lord Ozai kills the Avatar, and everyone in the play is really happy to hear about that. And Aang is just disconcerted. He's like, "Guys are all cheering for me to die."
Yeah. And in his mind, that was a possible outcome of the future.
Yes, very possible.
It to me, if I was going to submit an episode for an Emmy, that would have been it. The way they animated it on stage was so amazing. Um, the the single guy doing all the special effects
Hmm.
behind the scenes was absolutely hilarious. It was just a brilliant way to do a recap. Whoever's idea that was, I don't know if can you scroll up just a bit so we can see the writer on that episode?
For three writers.
Okay, if they were the ones that concepted that, I don't know if whose idea this was, but it was a brilliant recap of the entire series up to that point. Not to mention, it gives you a sense of foreboding because is this the way it's going to play out going into the final 4 part? I think it was 4 part.
Four part.
Yeah, 4 part episode of Sozin's Comet. So, what'd you think about the grand finale of the series, Draco?
Oh man, grand finale. So many ups and downs. Um, in this, this is one of this episode is one of the episodes that made me hate the Shyamalan movie as much as I did, because in this episode, all of the spirits that Aang has been interacting with, they're telling him, "You're gonna have to kill the Fire Lord."
Mm-hmm.
But Aang is a airbender. His people are pacifists. He's like, "Can't I just like beat him up or anything?" And they're like, "No, he's never gonna stop. You've got to kill him. It's the only way." And so Aang is heavily conflicted as to whether or not he can kill Ozai, and how that will change him and how that will affect him in the long run. Um, but you see a ton of stuff occur over this event of Sozin's Comet, and you learned I think it was at the end of season one, maybe the beginning of season two, that Sozin's Comet was going to come, and that the Fire Nation was preparing a grand offensive to sweep the Earth Nation clear of all the Earth Nation peoples during the event of Sozin's Comet. Sozin's Comet came once every 100 years, and that comet's arrival had been what had allowed the Fire Nation to rise to power 100 years in the past, after Avatar Roku had died.
That's right.
And so its reappearance was what the Fire Nation was waiting for in order to complete their conquest of the lands. They had developed new battle balloons, I guess you could call hot air balloons that they could do battle from. And this being the case, it was a major offensive that they were preparing for. Because as soon as the comet arrives in the sky, all the firebenders are supercharged at that point. So you learn over the course of all of this that you learn more about Uncle Iroh and the Order of the White Lotus, the secret society that he's a member of. You learn more um, about all the members of Team Avatar as they are preparing for this final confrontation. It was it was impressive. I think I may have actually just binged the entire uh, four episode 4 episodes all in one sitting. Well, in one night. So it was a lot of stuff to absorb at that point. But truly, I had not expected the way he was going to resolve it, and the way at the very end how Aang actually bends Firelord Ozai, and it's I guess you could call it spirit bending him to permanently strip him of his firebending abilities. And so afterwards, Team Avatar's like, dude, what'd you do? And he's like, oh, well, I took his bending away. And at that point, every bender who have been friends with him, they like withdraw. Like he's got the plague. Like you can do that because they are so attached to their bending that the mere fact that he has the ability to remove a person's bending makes them reconsider him again because maybe he's too powerful. What if he got angry with them because he's a kid, he gets angry from time to time.
That was pretty interesting, and he learns this from the lion turtle,
Yes.
the moving island that shows up. That he goes actually as of the very end of the episode in the finale, Team Avatar doesn't know if the Avatar is going to show up. In fact, they go and find the bounty hunter that had been after them at one point in I think season 2, and her slot. What was her creature? The anteater looking thing that could smell really well. I
I'm
can't
not
remember
certain.
what they called it, but it could smell you pretty much anywhere on the planet. And she tells him he's not here, like he's not anywhere. And come to find out, he is on the lion turtle, who tells him essentially how to spirit bend. He gives him the answer, the solution. You don't have to kill Fire Lord Ozai. You can just take his bending away, which is what we see at the end. But nobody knows where he is. But the
Hmm.
war goes on. The comet is coming. You can't forestall this. So they go on with their plan. Sokka and Suki are have taken over one of the war balloons that are heading toward Ba Sing Se. Uh, Zuko and Katara go to take down the Fire Lord. The Fire Lord Ozai is now the Phoenix King. I had
Hmm.
forgotten to bring that up. He was going to rise from the ashes of a destroyed Ba Sing Se as the Phoenix King. So he would essentially be the emperor over all of the world, and he puts his daughter in place as the Fire Lord. And
Hmm.
this was one of my favorite scenes out of the entire series. Zuko and Katara go to face Azula. Well, Zuko and my names are all running around in my head. Zuko and Azula are fighting to the death, and he gets injured. He gets struck by lightning, if you will, and isn't able to let it flow through him. Well, the fight falls to Katara at this point, and so she's getting beat around pretty badly. And there's a scene where she's kind of backed into the shadows, and she looks down, and there's a grate, and water is underneath the grate, and she's backing up, retreating. And Azula is coming on harder and harder, and Azula steps on the grate, and all of a sudden, Katara just raises the water up out of the grate and freezes them both. And you see Azula's eyes just kind of opening wide. And at that point, Katara starts bending the water around herself to where she can move within the ice, and she reaches around and chains Azula's hands back behind her,
Hmm.
chains her hands to her feet. And at this point, Azula had already been kind of going off her rocker a little bit. She'd been so paranoid of everyone betraying her that she had banished everyone from the land. Her whole squad of whatever her earthbending cadre was called. She had banished them. She had banished the two little old ladies who had been in the family for years. So she was going pretty nuts. So
Yes.
to see her get taken down by Katara and the way she got taken down was just super satisfying for me. What'd you think about that final battle?
Well, that battle was impressive. The battle between Zuko and Azula. Zuko throws himself in front of lightning to save Katara. Um,
That's right. That's right.
because even though Aang had originally been crushing on Katara, it seems that Zuko and Katara are the ones that may actually be, closer to happening. I don't know. I, Zuko is willing to sacrifice himself for another member of Team Avatar.
Right.
And that of course wins Katara over because Katara had been one of the last ones to accept Zuko as a member of the group, if I recall correctly.
That is absolutely correct because the last time she had any interaction with him was when they were in prison and he had opened up to her a little, or she had opened up to him um, a great deal while they were in prison. And she saw he was showing her the human side of himself, and then he betrayed her,
Mm-hmm.
betrayed the whole team. But she never forgot that. And she was mother hen over Team Avatar. It was like, if you guys want to accept him, that's fine. But I got my eye on you, dude.
Very true. Very true. Because she's not willing to give. I mean, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Indeed.
So, so yes, Azula is locked down. She goes full on 100% baddie, and 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 sorry, Katara heals Zuko. Because of course she's super powerful with the ways of waterbending and healing now.
Hmm. I did not expect Azula to go down to Katara. I I, I, I thought Zuko was going to get killed in that fight, but for some reason I just didn't see Katara winning that way, and it subverted my expectations in a really pleasant way, and that is possible, by the way.
Of course, of course. Well, especially because you have, I mean, that the her winning that battle is entirely because there was a grate with water running beneath it. If
Yeah,
there had not been there, I mean, I'm not certain why that grate is there. I don't know if maybe they use too much water when they're mopping the floors in the Fire Lord's chambers.
I'm
I'm
not for certain,
I'm
but
not certain either.
what it showed, another thing that it showed is just plain old good writing, because the whole time they were fighting, I kept chanting. Me and my kids were all chanting, bloodbender, bloodbender,
Yes.
bloodbender ass, because you did it just a couple of days ago when you were trying to avenge your father. So I kept thinking she was going to bloodbender at some point, but she didn't. She reserved that whole power, and didn't use it, didn't even consider it. It was like that was no longer a tool in her belt. She wasn't going to use it, and she won through other means. So that was really impressive.
Well, I mean, I'm wondering if that had originally been the plan, that she originally was meant to bloodbend her, but they decided at the end that that would have been too violent, killing her through bloodbending, and so they inserted that grate there as another means to achieve that victory.
Yeah, I think as a victory for Katara, she had to not bloodbend, in order to set that aside and
True,
kind of deal with her. She chose not to kill the man who killed her mother, and so I think that kind of put that to bed, and and her compass was back on track by that point. So that
true
was really
enough.
cool. You see Sozin in prison at the end. You see Zuko crowned the
New
new
Fire Lord.
Fire Lord, indeed, and him and Aang become buddies. What else happens in that episode? You see Sokka do his thing. Toph, Toph and her continue. What did Toph? Toph was with them. Oh yeah, she metal bent. She metal bent the top of the airships to crash into the
Hmm.
rest of them. So her and Sokka were on the same little troop. So yeah, lots of cool stuff going on. I was extremely satisfied with the way it ended. In fact, there's 10 minutes left in the episode once both threats are taken care of, which I really liked because a lot of series or books or well any kind of series just ends and it's like, oh hey, the threat is over and then the end. But I liked how there was a little bit of a wind down.
A little bit of an epilogue.
Yeah, like we don't have to go all the way back to the Shire and have a whole nother battle or anything, but yeah, we did get some wind down. We see Zuko and Aang are friends. We see that May has been let out of prison, and her and Zuko are going to be together. You see Ty Lee also out of prison. She's become one of the Kyoshi warriors now. We get to see the fate or the future of some of the key players throughout the
Hmm.
series that we've met. So that was really cool. I really liked that. I didn't like the Katara Aang romance, and when they kissed at the end, I think all of us were kind of like, "Oh, come on!" But
Yeah, I understand.
you can't have it all.
That's true. That's true. But overall, at the end of at the end of the series, you are jacked. You've just seen this incredibly climactic battle. You've seen all of the players have had their part to play. All of these different conflicting arcs have finally met some kind of resolution. And at that point, you are emotionally exhausted because you've been tied up in all these characters for so long. You're never exactly certain how things are going to pan out, if they're going to pan out, who's going to survive it all. And yeah, it was an amazing journey for everyone involved.
It was, and it of the entire series, which is 60 something episodes, there were only two episodes that I wasn't a huge fan of. One was the dance party, and the other was the frat party, both in season three. But that's a hell of a ratio, man.
That
There's
is,
no other series that I can claim that with.
I know you were expressing some uncertainty coming off of both the dance party and the frat party episodes.
I was like, what the hell happened in season three? Did they change producers or right? What's going on here? But you told me it solidified very soon after that, and you were right. It comes back together, and then it doesn't slow down at all.
Not at
I mean,
all.
it just goes full speed till the end. I've never it's and you know what? It only needed to be three seasons. They told their story. They told it in a complete way without a lot of filler. And that's why it was so good. There were no filler episodes. Well, those two. But aside from that, I can't think of another show that just doesn't have, that's all killer, no filler, if you will. Did you feel that way as well?
I agree. I agree that it was a extremely well put together show that never really had any dead zones. It didn't ever have any dead air. Nothing really was ever too awkward unless they wanted to make something awkward between the characters, which
Correct.
from time to time you could tell they did that intentionally.
Oh, yeah.
But there were very few just straight up dead dud episodes. And I felt the same way about the beach party, the frat party episode, the dance party episode. I was a little bit more forgiving of that night. Maybe I was really tired when I watched it. I don't know. But I enjoyed the series thoroughly, and I've really want to be able to pass this on to my next generation, my nieces and nephews, and my kids when I have kids.
Absolutely, man. And I'll be excited for my kids to watch it as adults if they can revisit this someday. That's one of those series that I could imagine had I watched this as a younger or as a child watching this again with the nostalgia factor at play as well, and enjoying it again. So this is a series that I will definitely watch again, probably sooner rather than later. And I'm really looking forward to the Legend of Korra. The movie left a bad taste in my mouth, and so I'm ready to get back to the animation side of things.
Well, it looks like they had more than just the Legend of Korra. Based off of the Wikipedia, it appears that there were some comics that came afterwards. There was The Promise, Search, Rift, Smoke and Shadow, North and South, and Imbalance comic trilogies.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so that fills in all the events that occur between the Avatar: The Last Airbender and then the Legend of Korra.
Wow.
The Legend of Korra, which ba, ba, ba,
Now, did you've seen Korra, correct?
I have not.
Oh, you have not seen it. Okay.
Yeah. The series follows Avatar Korra, the reincarnation of Aang. So she is the next Avatar.
Right. 4 seasons. I'm not sure how many episodes. Would that be 40, 52? So roughly the same number of episodes, but more
Set
seasons.
70
So
years after the last
okay,
Airbender.
okay. So I look forward to seeing it. Do you plan on putting that on your menu, Draco?
I do. I don't currently own The Legend of Korra or have access to it, but I'm going to work on that.
All right. Well, anything else we want to say about the franchise, The Last Airbender?
Wonderful series. Take your kids to go see it, but don't let them watch the movie.
Yeah, man. I tell you what. Yeah, even my kids agreed. They thought, man, this looks really cool. I tried to not tell them anything about it going in, so they went
Yeah,
in pretty much blind. But then, as the movie was going on, there were things that they point very observant. I mean, even as children, they recognized the faults that the movie had. But they agreed after the film when we discussed it. They thought it looked great and the special effects were all great. But they were really pissed about the pronunciation. That was every time that one of the names was said wrong, they would shout at the screen. So they'd say Soka, and they'd say it's Sokka. They just got really pissed about that, and rightly so, man. Come on, that's something easy to get. But this
oh
is one of the
yes,
best series I have ever seen. It stands up against anything. I mean, it's short. I mean, 3 seasons, but you know what? If that's all the story you have to tell, there's no reason to fill it out with filler, man. I'd prefer to see a short series like that that's top notch with no filler than to see a series I like just drag on and on and on without any sense of purpose.
agreed.
Which, so great writing, um, great direction, great animation. I I mean I give this thing an A+. I mean there's very few other properties I can think that even come close.
I would also give it an A. I would give the animated show an A plus, uh, without any hesitation or equivocation.
That's awesome. I'm glad we could agree on that. And an A+ is hard to achieve.
It is extremely hard to achieve, and it's as we find, it's extremely hard to follow up as well.
Indeed.
So, anyhow, that has been our review of Nickelodeon's Avatar: The Last Airbender, and its related property, the M Night Shyamalan movie Avatar: The Last Airbender. If you've enjoyed this video, please, as always, like and subscribe. Leave us a comment below, and remember, everyone, uh, da, da,
Be
da.
kind,
Live long and prosper,
and may
and
the
may the
force
force
be
be
with
with
you.
you.